Rationing in Britain during the Second World War was not simply a minor inconvenience to civilian life. It was arguably the single most important domestic measure undertaken to ensure the nation's long-term survival against the combined forces of German military aggression and naval blockade. The United Kingdom, highly industrialized and densely populated, was dangerously dependent on global trade, importing a staggering 70% of its total food supply before the outbreak of hostilities. This extreme vulnerability was immediately identified by the German High Command, which unleashed its U-boat fleet in the relentless Battle of the Atlantic, targeting the convoys carrying essential food and critical raw materials. To counter this existential threat, the government had no choice but to drastically reduce domestic demand and implement a meticulous system to ensure a fair, equitable distribution of the scarce supplies that managed to navigate the perilous shipping lanes. The foundational, non-negotiable goals were clear: maintaining social equity, preserving national health, and bolstering civilian morale, thereby guaranteeing that no one, regardless of their financial status or social standing, would face hunger or malnutrition, which helped preclude the kind of devastating social unrest witnessed during the Great War. The system for controlling consumption was not implemented in a single sudden move, but was introduced incrementally and deliberately, beginning well before the supply crisis reached its peak severity. Formal food rationing officially began in January 1940, initiating with just a handful of the most critical imported items: bacon, butter, and sugar. Over the next 4 years, as the U-boat war intensified and imports became even more erratic and dangerous to secure, the government steadily expanded the controlled list to include virtually every essential commodity necessary for daily life, eventually covering tea, cheese, eggs, jam, cooking fat, meat, and milk. To manage this pervasive control, every single citizen, from Prime Minister Winston Churchill to the smallest infant, was officially issued a personal ration book. These books contained meticulous, detachable coupons that had to be presented simultaneously with the required money to the consumer's pre-registered shopkeeper. This meticulously complex bureaucratic system ensured precise, verifiable control over the entire nation's collective consumption habits and prevented hoarding. The person largely credited with establishing the foundational nutritional philosophy of the rationing regime was Lord Woolton, the exceptionally capable Minister of Food, whose primary mandate was to design a national diet that prioritized maximum public nutrition rather than mere survival or indulgence. He famously championed and introduced the highly regulated national loaf, a markedly healthier bread made using 85 extraction wholemeal flour, specifically replacing the whiter, less fibrous, and less nutritious pre-war varieties. While the resulting wartime diet was often undeniably monotonous, characterized by limited variety and blandness, historical analysis has demonstrated it was also surprisingly robust and nutritionally superior to the pre-war working-class diet. With the enforced reduction in rich fats and sugar, and a mandated increase in the consumption of readily available vegetables and high-fiber whole foods, the general public health of the British population, particularly among children, paradoxically saw a significant improvement during the war years, evidenced by notable drops in dental decay and infant mortality rates. The rationing of meat posed a uniquely complex logistical and administrative challenge for the Ministry of Food. Unlike most other commodities, which were allocated strictly by weight or volume, meat was rationed meticulously by financial value, shillings and pence. This meant that the actual weekly quantity, measured in ounces, that a person received could vary considerably depending on the specific cut of meat they chose to purchase. Opting for cheaper cuts, like stewing beef or tripe, meant a greater total volume of meat, while choosing more expensive cuts, such as prime steak, meant a very small, meager portion for the entire week. This clever system was ingeniously designed to subtly but effectively encourage the purchase of cheaper, less desirable cuts, which strategically stretched the nation's limited overall meat supply across the largest possible population, forcing the average housewife to become incredibly resourceful with meat scraps, ground meat, and vegetable extenders. To inject a small, necessary measure of flexibility and choice beyond the fixed coupon rations for core staples, the government introduced the ingenious points rationing system in December 1941. This flexible system covered non-staple, imported, or non-perishable luxury items, encompassing goods such as canned meats, dried fruit, breakfast cereals, biscuits, and condensed milk. Every person was issued a dedicated monthly allowance of ration points, initially set at 16 points per month. Crucially, these specific items did not have fixed coupons, but each was assigned a variable point value determined by its scarcity and size. This highly innovative system gave consumers a vital measure of personal choice and economic flexibility. They could strategically spend all their available points on one large, highly desired tin of imported salmon, or they could spread their points out over several smaller, more diverse items, allowing for some level of personal preference within the otherwise rigid structure of scarcity. To alleviate the immense pressure on the transatlantic shipping convoys and free up essential cargo space for critical military weapons and troops, the government launched the ubiquitous, hugely successful Dig for Victory campaign. This massive, emotional public appeal used persuasive posters and radio spots to urge every single citizen to convert any available outdoor space, private gardens, public parks, school playing fields, and even decorative ornamental flower beds into highly productive vegetable patches. The campaign achieved phenomenal success, rapidly transforming domestic gardening from a niche hobby into an absolute patriotic duty. This vast, decentralized food production network provided a crucial supplemental source of fresh nutrition and, equally importantly, provided the anxious civilian population with an active, morale-boosting way to feel like they were personally, physically contributing to the war effort against the strangulating U-boat blockade. The immense daily responsibility for making the complex rationing system function efficiently and successfully fell squarely and often invisibly upon the shoulders of the British housewife. They were the unsung, logistical heroes of the home front, facing the grueling daily challenge of conceptualizing and creating palatable, nutritious, and filling meals from an increasingly limited, monotonous, and often unfamiliar range of ingredients. These women relied heavily on government pamphlets that provided novel recipes for items like Woolton pie, a resourceful, pastry-topped vegetable and potato dish named after the Minister of Food himself, and tirelessly experimented with innovative, sometimes desperate, substitutes for restricted ingredients like butter, eggs, and fats, leading to an explosion of culinary ingenuity and the widespread sharing of resourceful neighborhood tips designed to stretch every single meager ration coupon to its absolute limit. The imposition of controls extended well beyond the larder, touching every aspect of material life. Clothing rationing began in June 1941, arguably inflicting a greater initial psychological shock on the population than the food restrictions. Every single item of clothing, from a pair of socks, which required 1 coupon, to a new man's overcoat, which demanded 18 coupons, required ration coupons for purchase. Citizens were severely limited to about 66 coupons per year initially, later drastically reduced. This severe restriction forced extreme frugality and led to an unprecedented surge in mending, meticulous recycling, and hand-me-downs. The public was relentlessly encouraged to embrace the philosophy of make, do, and mend through ubiquitous public workshops and printed instruction manuals, ensuring that all old clothes were painstakingly maintained, repaired, and refashioned rather than simply discarded, conserving vital fabric resources. To standardize production, conserve precious raw materials, and ensure equitable access to quality goods, the Board of Trade introduced the extensive utility scheme and the now iconic CC41 Controlled Commodity 1941 mark. This distinctive, often printed logo indicated that an item, be it a dress, a kitchen table, or a pair of shoes, met stringent government-mandated standards for functional design, simplicity, and required durability. Utility clothing designs were characterized by their use of minimal fabric, the elimination of unnecessary stylistic features like pleats, cuffs, and excess pockets, and adherence to a basic, timeless style. This enforced national austerity inadvertently created a kind of uniformity of elegant simplicity, powerfully proving that functional, resource-conscious design could still be widely accepted, commercially viable, and even aesthetically fashionable. Rationing controls were comprehensive, encompassing far more than just food and clothing. Petrol rationing was implemented with brutal severity, almost entirely curtailing leisure driving and transforming national transportation habits, forcing reliance on public transport, bicycles, and walking. Additionally, vital household goods like coal for heating, soap, and even specialized commercial commodities like office stationery and basic furnishings were strictly rationed. The purchase of new domestic furniture, like clothing, was often restricted exclusively to government-approved utility furniture marked with the CC41 stamp, meticulously ensuring that items were simple, robust, functionally designed, and consumed the absolute minimum of scarce imported timber, metal, and specialized labor. The strict control over luxury items, which were deemed non-essential to core public nutrition, inflicted a unique psychological pinch. Sweet and chocolate rationing began in July 1942, delivering a particularly crushing blow to the spirits of children and adults seeking small comforts. While these items were not vital nutritionally, they were deeply important as morale boosters, and their extreme scarcity led to complex, often tense, social negotiations within families and neighborhoods over their limited distribution. Tobacco was also rationed, and its scarcity was a serious issue, particularly for soldiers returning from the front and for public morale, leading to a constant high-value black market trade in coveted items like American cigarettes and imported chocolate bars. The rationing of tea, which was implemented in July 1940, proved to be perhaps the most culturally and psychologically critical restriction of all. For the vast majority of the British population, tea was not merely a beverage. It was a fundamental social, cultural, and emotional institution, an essential, non-negotiable comfort in times of profound crisis, cementing social bonds. The government was acutely and politically aware of tea's central role in maintaining civilian morale. While the ration was kept very tight, initially 2 ounces per person per week, the continued steady supply of tea was viewed as an absolute national priority, and the simple, daily ritual of sharing a cup of tea remained a crucial expression of continuity, resilience, and solidarity amidst the chaos of the Blitz and the V-weapon attacks. To simultaneously ensure that essential industrial workers received adequate sustenance and that those who had been bombed out of their homes still had access to proper cooked meals, the government established a national network of British restaurants, initially branded as communal feeding centres. These subsidized, deliberately plain restaurants offered simple, wholesome, multi-course meals for very low, affordable prices without requiring the surrender of any ration coupons. They rapidly served as vital social hubs and provided essential nutrition to millions of people, effectively representing a subtle but significant step in socializing a portion of the nation's catering system and ensuring that individual rations could be strategically conserved, primarily for weekend and evening home cooking. Despite the generally high degree of public compliance, reinforced by patriotic duty and moral consensus, an inevitable, though comparatively small, black market did emerge and persist. This black market was driven by simple human desire, economic disparity, and the willingness of a few to seek out unrationed items or excess rations through illicit means. Highly coveted goods like illegally sourced eggs, fresh butter, and smuggled foreign spirits commanded exorbitant, inflated prices. However, due to the comprehensive, highly centralized nature of the rationing system and a general, powerful sense of shared, moral disapproval of profiteering during wartime, the black market never reached the pervasive, crippling scale seen in some other occupied or blockaded European countries, although its existence was a constant, low-level logistical and public relations headache for authorities. One of the most profound, though often overlooked consequences of the entire rationing period was the unexpected forging of a genuine sense of social solidarity and collective identity that cut across rigid pre-war class barriers. Because the system was strictly and fairly enforced with absolute equality, the wealthy factory owner received the exact same meager butter ration as the poorest coal miner. It fostered a powerful, tangible sense of shared sacrifice and mutual fairness that transcended historical class resentments. This collective, daily experience of shared hardship and ingenuity is frequently cited by sociologists and historians as a key non-military factor in the remarkably high levels of national morale sustained throughout the most intense and stressful years of the war. The very feasibility and sustained success of the British rationing program were fundamentally and strategically enabled by the assistance of the United States through the landmark Lend-Lease Act, enacted in 1941. This critical program saw the U.S. transfer vast, essential quantities of food, oil, and military material to Britain on a non-cash basis, effectively insulating the UK from complete economic collapse and eventual military defeat by starvation, while the British population was compelled to consume less and rely more heavily on homegrown food. The constant, though hazardous, flow of Lend-Lease convoys ensured that the vital minimum supply kept arriving, reinforcing the essential strategic importance of the Allied alliance to the ultimate success and durability of the rationing system itself. The system demonstrated a clear recognition of the paramount psychological and nutritional need to prioritize and protect children. The youngest citizens were often granted special, immediate dispensations, such as an early, necessary increase in their basic milk ration or priority access to subsidized nutritional supplements like orange juice concentrate and cod liver oil, the latter two often provided directly through Lend-Lease shipments. These small but nutritionally crucial advantages were designed specifically to minimize the long-term, debilitating impact of scarcity on the youngest generation and provided a vital source of comfort and nutritional security for deeply anxious parents facing the daily uncertainties of war. The Ministry of Food rapidly evolved into a master of highly effective wartime propaganda and comprehensive public information campaigns. They produced an endless stream of persuasive posters, engaging radio announcements featuring celebrity voices, and ubiquitous detailed recipe pamphlets, all featuring memorable, highly effective slogans like "Food is a munition, don't waste it," and creating popular personas like Dr. Carrot to encourage healthy eating. This constant, friendly, and emotionally resonant public communication was absolutely crucial for securing high public compliance, helping to transform the difficult task of adhering to rationing from a stern, alienating military dictate into a shared, necessary, and unifying national public endeavor. Despite the glorious cessation of hostilities in 1945, the period of severe austerity did not immediately end, and rationing restrictions, far from being instantly lifted, frustratingly remained strictly in place. The global shipping infrastructure and supply chains were utterly devastated, and Britain had incurred massive international debt, forcing a continued reliance on strict government controls to ensure necessary economic recovery and stability. Ironically, the rations for certain core staples, like bread and potatoes, actually became demonstrably stricter for a period after the war officially ended than they had been during the conflict itself. The final, powerful symbolic moment of this era was delayed until 1954, when meat rationing was finally discontinued, a full 9 years after VE Day, marking the definitive end of an unprecedented era of collective national resource control. When the strict rationing system was finally and definitively wound up, there was a noticeable and profound societal decline in the traditional cooking skills and resourcefulness that had been painstakingly honed during the long war years. The sudden, immediate availability of cheap, imported, processed food options meant that the painstaking art of making do meticulously improvising meals from scratch and utilizing resource-stretching techniques, was rapidly and widely lost. The post-war era witnessed a sharp cultural shift towards convenience foods, with the skills of utilizing clever wartime alternatives like whale meat, reconstituted powdered egg, and mock cream largely abandoned, forgotten, and even actively disdained as relics of a difficult past. The influence of the CC-41 utility scheme left an indelible and often subtle mark on the development of post-war British fashion and design philosophy. The mandated simplicity, clean, elegant lines, and high durability enforced by the rationing rules unintentionally became the very foundation for many post-war styles. While fabric controls eventually eased and new materials became available, the cultural preference for minimalist design aesthetics and enduring quality construction persisted deeply within the national consciousness. Many of the functional, timeless styles developed under the rigid control of the war effort became highly iconic looks of the late 1940s and early 1950s, indirectly influencing British designers for decades to come, proving necessity is the mother of enduring style. While the nutritional standards of the civilian population temporarily saw an improvement during the tightly controlled rationing years, the long-term public health trend sharply reversed course after the controls were completely lifted. The immediate post-rationing availability and widespread consumption of cheap, readily available fats, highly refined sugar, and highly palatable processed foods led to a rapid and significant increase in their consumption. This immediate post-war dietary shift, combined with the swift loss of the morale-boosting dig-for-victory motivation, contributed demonstrably to a widespread decline in several key public health metrics and the slow, inexorable onset of lifestyle-related diseases later in the 20th century, contrasting sharply with the unexpected public health peak achieved during the years of wartime scarcity. For the generation that experienced it firsthand, the rationing period created a uniquely powerful, shared collective memory, defined by the visual presence of ration books, the necessity of waiting in queues, and the simple yet profound importance of a single extra egg or piece of imported fruit. This common experience of mandated sacrifice and demonstrated ingenuity served as a powerful, unifying cultural touchstone, fostering a deep-seated, lifelong suspicion of wastefulness and instilling a lifelong appreciation for the value of food and material resources that persisted long after the official ration books were finally declared obsolete and ceremoniously discarded in 1954. Despite the undeniable hardship, inconvenience, and long duration, the British rationing program is universally viewed by contemporary historians and economists as an unqualified strategic success. It not only achieved its primary, life-saving goals, preventing widespread starvation and maintaining national health at acceptable or even slightly elevated levels, but also ensured a profound sense of social equity that fundamentally reinforced civilian morale during periods of intense military pressure. The program stands as a powerful testament to the democratic government's ability to exert pervasive, direct control over the economy, to achieve absolutely critical strategic national goals with remarkably high levels of voluntary public compliance and unity. The comprehensive, equitable, and highly centralized British rationing system ultimately became an incredibly influential global case study in effective crisis management and large-scale social engineering. It clearly demonstrated that, under conditions of extreme national duress, democratic nations could successfully implement widespread, painful austerity measures and strict resource controls, provided that the entire program was universally perceived as demonstrably fair, strategically necessary, and communicated to the public with unwavering clarity and honesty. This effective model continues to be referenced globally as a paramount historical precedent for how a modern society can collectively manage and successfully endure periods of extreme and prolonged resource scarcity with high public buy-in and unity.